Welcome back, YouTubers. This is Omar from Near Mint Condition, and today I'm going to talk about the mighty Thor Heroes Return Omnibus Volume 1 and 2, what it contains, and whether they are worth the purchase or not. So stay tuned. So let's look at Volume 1. This is a John Romita cover. This is what the back looks like, the spine. Let's take this off. I love when they put the artwork of the covers in the back. So, let's see. This is Thor by Dan Jurgens, pretty much. This is the Heroes Return stuff, right after they were sold to Image. This is when the Marvel characters started coming back to Marvel. And Thor was given to the hands of John Romita Jr., and like I said, written by Dan Jurgens. So this first omnibus collects Thor 1 through 35. There's a rough cut in here. The Silver Surfer Thor Annual 1998, the Thor Annual 99 and 2000. Then the crossover with Peter Parker Spider-Man number 2 and number 11, Iron Man number 22, Juggernaut, The Eighth Day, and then some material from Iron Man number 21. And as you can see here, most of the stuff here is drawn by John Romita Jr. I believe Klaus Janson was his inker during this time. Let's flip through some here. I think to me, this is probably definitely in my top 5 favorite Thor runs. Especially when I get to talk about the second volumes where it really shines. And it's pretty cool because, to me, this Dan Jurgens wrote a lot of Superman, and he was known for his superheroic stuff in that book. And a little bit of this, in the way that it's written, in the way that he writes Thor, you can see that he borrowed elements from those books that he wrote. And honestly, and looking back and reading these again, it seems like Jason Aaron is doing the exact same thing in the way that there was a fall of Asgard and things like that. Now, I'm going to talk maybe just a little bit of spoilers since these stories are from 1998 all the way to 2004. So we're talking about a over 15-year period. Yeah, I forgot. At the time, John Romita Jr. was also drawing Peter Parker's Spider-Man. So it's crazy that he was able to do Thor and that book. But once he leaves, we get the talents of Adam Kubert, which we'll get to here in a little bit. This is the late John Buscema and Jerry Ordway. But as I was saying, I think it's a really cool book. It's a really awesome era to me in Marvel because I wasn't collecting comics back then, so I missed out on all this stuff, and I didn't get to read it until the trade paperbacks. By the way, these two Omnis have been collected previously in trade paperbacks, and the Thor Ragnarok book was collected in a hardcover and trade paperback as well. What stood out about this book was that Dan Jurgens wrote this book from 98 to 2004, and he was one of the very few writers at Marvel at the time that stayed on the same book. And it's pretty cool because then you can see how the style of the book changes from the very festive traditional style of the late 90s to the more darker, shadier, and decompressed style towards the end of the run. There are themes and overall arcs that connect the entire story together. It wasn't perfect. There were some iffy issues here and there, but that's to be expected from somebody that wrote the book for so long. By far, the good outweigh the bad, believe me. Especially when there's this whole long story arc with what happens to Odin, and then what happens to Asgard. Thought it was really cool what he was able to do. Now, my favorite run of all time on Thor is, of course, Walter Simonson's run. I can't get enough of that guy's run. It's amazing. And I'm really enjoying Jason Aaron's run, but seriously, Jason Aaron's run really mimics a lot of what Dan Jurgens did back here. Here's some, I love this story arc right here. There's some stuff by Michael Ryan, and then you've got Tom Rainey as well. Now, what I was going to say, yeah, it seems like there was just nothing but superheroic fun during the beginning where he's like smashing up against the Juggernaut, and then he's fighting Thanos. Yeah, this is what I was talking about. And I love the way that John Romita Jr. draws Thanos. He draws him like a complete, big, thick badass. And the fights are spectacular in here. I love the colors during this time, too. This is the very first part. And to me, it doesn't get better until the second omnibus, which we'll look here in a second. What I also enjoyed about his run is he made me a fan of the Warriors 3. Like, I liked them during Simonson's run and the Falco's run. Oh, here's a cool cover by Mignola. But I think, to me, I really like the way that they were written here. And here's some of that Eric Larson artwork, mimicking a lot of the old Jack Kirby stuff. I really dig Larson stuff. To this day, big fan of Savage Dragon. And here's when Andy Kubert, I'm sorry, it was Andy, not Adam, joins the team. Malachi. There's the Warriors 3 that I was talking about. Yeah, I really liked Andy Kubert and inked by Scott Hanna. I thought his art really shined. Now, here's just one of my little nitpicks. I didn't like the way that Jurgens wrote Jane for some reason. I don't know. She just seemed like a different character than what other writers had done with her. There's Sif. Yeah, this is some gorgeous Andy Kubert art. So if you're a fan of this guy, might just be worth purchasing for his art. And here is some Stuart Eminem stuff. Back to Kubert. I love the Dark God saga. Thought it was really cool. And then the whole Asgard over Manhattan. That stuff was awesome too. Look at that hotness that is the Enchantress. And here is some stuff in the back, like pencil artwork by John Romita Jr., the script, covers from Wizard magazines, and articles that were written about the run back then. So let's look at Volume 2. Oh, these are the combined covers right here. It's pretty cool. Here is Volume 2. You might notice that Thor is now sporting that badass beard. Again, the cover's in the back. And let's look at the inside. This is artwork by Tom Rainey. Oh yeah, dig that. Let's go. Let's look in here and look at the contents of the book. Volume 2 collects the rest of the run. This is Thor 36 through 85. I guess it's still called the Heroes Return era. Annual 2001, Iron Man 64, Avengers 63, and then some material from the Marvel Double Shot #1. Most of this stuff is written by Dan Jurgens, but he's also joined by Christopher Priest in this run. And the end, the Thor Ragnarok story, was actually written by Michael Avon Oeming. I think there's some, the Avengers issue was actually written by Jeff Johns, if I'm not mistaken. I did say there was one thing that kind of aggravated me a little bit about the Volume 1 run, and that's the portrayal of Jane Foster. But there was another thing, and I forgot about this until just now. It was when he merged with Jake Olsen, and Jake Olsen was like a paramedic, and Thor used him as a human host. There's Lady Thor. So yes, Jane Foster wasn't the first. It didn't go on too long, but it got on my nerves. I do remember that. So stick with the book, believe me. It gets a lot better. Here's some Jim Starlin artwork. And then we're back to Stuart Eminem. And like I mentioned earlier, Volume 1 seems to be a lot of superheroics and just clashing with huge characters like the Grey Gargoyle and, of course, Juggernaut and Thanos, like I said. And then Volume 2 takes a really darker tone, like what happens with Asgard, what happens with Odin, and where that leaves Thor and his legacy with Asgard. Thought it was really cool, and there's a lot of really awesome stories in here. This is the Nuff Said issue right here. I love these. This is the one that every Marvel comic for this month had no words in it. It's a pretty badass issue, actually. And here is the rest of his run. This is a couple of months afterwards. A little time jump here. There's Grey Gargoyle. So this one contains artwork by Tom Raimi, Philip Tan, Carrie Andrews, Phil Jimenez, and, like I said, Stuart Eminem there toward the beginning. Carlos Pacheco, Pete Craig Russell, and Alan Davis, because I believe Alan Davis was on Avengers during this time. This is during the Lord of Asgard years. And we'll flip through here. Of course, you have the characters like Iron Man and Captain America show up, because what is Thor without the Avengers every once in a while? And it's pretty cool because during like the later part of Dan Jurgens' run, it's during the Kang Dynasty saga, which was happening during Avengers. So you kind of see a little bit of that show up in here. And this is, of course, right before Bendis took over the Avengers book and it became New Avengers. For some reason, Jurgens finished out his story, and I thought it was a pretty interesting finish to his long storyline that he did for almost, here we go, 6 years, or almost 7 years, rather. And then this begins the Thor Ragnarok, which they gave to Michael Avon Oeming, like I said. And it's kind of like the last story of Thor, and we don't see Thor for a long time. It wasn't until JMS, Straczynski's run with Oliver Copiel, that we get to see Thor again, because he misses out on all that Civil War and House of M stuff. So, I mean, Thor was gone for a long time. And, I mean, the story itself, Ragnarok, is not, to me, as good as the rest of the stuff in here, Dan Jurgens' run. If you've never read this, I'm going to skip through some of the final pages there so you can... And, okay, so we got more articles, more extras in the back, and then an afterwards. But That was written back in 2004. Why couldn't they get a new one? Yeah, like I said, I don't think Ragnarok was as good as the rest of the Omnibus. I think it really shines when you get to about 36 to about 80. I think that's probably some of the best Thor that was ever written. The reason I'm saying, oh, hell yeah, Paco Medina. I love this guy's artwork. The only reason why I picked up that stupid Deadpool Omnibus by Daniel Way recently. This is some early stuff of his. And where was I? I just lost my damn train of thought. Tom Mandrake on art. I know that Volume 1 has been on sale at In-Stock Trades, too, for like 60% off. So, I mean, and there are trade paperbacks if you want to give it a shot to see if this is even for you. So, that is Thor Volume 2. And that's it. That is Thor Heroes Return Volumes 1 and 2 Omnibus by Dan Jurgens and also written by Michael Avon Oeming. So I hope I was able to either talk you into purchasing them or giving them a pass. If this is your first time watching this video, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe button if you liked what you saw. And don't forget to check out our regular show that comes out every Thursday where we talk about anime, video games, manga, comic books, and toys. Again, this was Omar. Thank you for watching and have a great day.